in a dramatic display of civil disobedience. At least 98 people were arrested Thursday in the lobby of Trump Tower in Manhattan, while protesting the detention of Mahmoud Khalil, a prominent pro-Palestinian activist and U.S. green card holder. The arrest of Khalil by Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, earlier this week, has ignited widespread outrage, drawing hundreds of demonstrators to one of New York City's most recognizable landmarks. A protest of conscience, the demonstration, was led by Jewish activists, wearing T-shirts emblazoned with the phrase, "Not in our name." The group staged a sit-in, calling for Khalil's immediate release and condemning what they described as state repression and political persecution. They carried banners that read, "Jews say free Mahmoud and free Palestine, and fight Nazis, not students," emphasizing their stance against what they see as an unjust crackdown on activists advocating for Palestinian rights. According to the New York Police Department, NYPD, the protesters face charges, including trespassing and resisting arrest. Authorities stated that many protesters entered the lobby in civilian clothing, concealing their protest gear until they were inside the building. NYPD officials also noted that they were familiar with the tactics of this particular group, having encountered them in prior demonstrations at Trump Tower. The detention of Mahmoud Khalil, a well-known activist and leader of protests against the war in Gaza at Columbia University, was taken into ICE custody earlier this week in New York. He has since been transferred to a detention facility in Louisiana, a move that his supporters claim is a deliberate effort to isolate him from legal aid and media attention. His arrest has drawn widespread condemnation from human rights organizations and legal advocacy groups. The Council on American Islamic Relations, CAIR, has announced that it will file a federal lawsuit on behalf of Khalil and other students against Columbia University and the U.S. House Committee on Education and the Workforce. The lawsuit is in response to the committee's demand for the disclosure of thousands of student records, a move activists see as a targeted attack on pro-Palestinian students. Personal toll on Khalil's family. Khalil's wife, who is currently 8 months pregnant, has issued an emotional plea for his release, describing the devastating impact of his detention on their family. "Mahmoud has been ripped away from me for no reason at all," she said in a statement to ABC News on Wednesday. "I am pleading with the world to continue to speak up against his unjust and horrific detention by the Trump administration." The couple had been preparing for the birth of their child when Khalil was detained, adding an additional layer of emotional distress to an already difficult situation, allegations and denials. The Trump administration has alleged that Khalil's activism aligns him with Hamas, an accusation that has been strongly refuted by his legal team. Baher Azmi, one of Khalil's attorneys, dismissed the allegations as false and preposterous, setting aside the false and preposterous premise that advocating on behalf of Palestinian human rights and pleading with public officials to stop an ongoing genocide constitutes alignment with Hamas. His speech is absolutely protected by the Constitution. Azmi told ABC News on Monday, "It should be chilling to everyone that the United States government could punish or try to deport someone simply because they disapprove of the speech they're engaged in, historical context, and broader implications." The arrest of Khalil comes at a time of heightened tensions surrounding free speech on college campuses, particularly regarding the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. In recent years, pro-Palestinian activists have increasingly faced scrutiny and legal challenges, often accused of supporting terrorism for their outspoken criticism of Israeli government policies. Protesters arrested at Trump Tower sit-in for detained activist Mahmoud Khalil. Jewish activists participating in the Trump Tower sit-in drew parallels between Khalil's detention and historical instances of political persecution. Jane Hirschman, a Jewish New Yorker whose grandfather and uncle were abducted by the Nazis during Hitler's rise to power, spoke passionately about the dangers of state repression. As Jews of conscience, we know our history, and we know where this leads. This is what fascists do as they cement control. Hirschman said, "This moment requires all people of conscience to take bold action to resist state violence and repression. Free Mahmoud now." Escalating crackdown on Activism. Khalil's case is not the first instance of US authorities targeting pro-Palestinian activists. Over the past decade, numerous activists, academics, and journalists have faced surveillance, travel restrictions, and visa denials due to their political beliefs. Many legal scholars argue that such measures represent an unconstitutional infringement on free speech and assembly. Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch have both issued statements condemning Khalil's detention, calling on the Biden administration to intervene. However, with the political climate around immigration and national security growing increasingly charged, it remains unclear whether federal authorities will reconsider Khalil's case. Public response and next steps. The Trump Tower protest is just one of several demonstrations planned in the coming weeks. Activists have vowed to continue organizing, with plans for nationwide rallies and legal action to challenge what they see as an unlawful and politically motivated detention. Meanwhile, Columbia University has faced mounting pressure from students and faculty to take a stand against Khalil's detention. Several student organizations have called for a campus-wide walkout, demanding that the university publicly denounce the government's actions. As the legal battle over Khalil's fate unfolds, the case has become a flashpoint in the broader struggle for free speech, civil liberties, and immigrant rights in the United States. The outcome will not only affect Khalil and his family, but also set a precedent for the future of activism in an increasingly polarized political landscape. For now, activists and supporters continue to push for Khalil's immediate release, refusing to back down despite the risks. Whether their efforts will ultimately lead to his freedom remains to be seen. But one thing is clear: the fight for Mahmoud Khalil is far from over.